So I started out traditionally working at this like 40 lawyer law firm in San Diego where we represented charter schools throughout the state. So it was a very typical lawyer lifestyle that was probably 70 hours a week. There was a lot of travel involved, and there was offices throughout California. And anytime that the partners wanted you to go to Sacramento, you had to go. You had to go to LA, you had to go. So I did that for about a year. I realized about 30 days in that wasn't going to work for me. So
Welcome to Show Your Receipts, where we believe if you can see it, you can be it. Receipts are evidence or proof that something has occurred. Our guests are evidence that Black excellence is alive and well. They will be sharing their receipts on how they've been able to accomplish so much in their life. I'm your host, Tony Jackson. Let's get started. Welcome to Show Your Receipts, where we believe if you can see it, you can be it. Today, we have a phenomenal guest. I'm going to read off his bio. I am super excited to talk to this gentleman today. My guest today, his name is Dolan Williams. He holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Northern Arizona University, a master's degree in criminology from Arizona State University, a master's degree in education from the University of Phoenix, and a Juris Doctor from Purdue Global Law School. Dolan is an attorney who is licensed to practice law in the state of California. After law school in 2016, Dolan worked for a mid-sized law firm in San Diego, representing California public schools in various legal matters. As a side gig, Dolan also taught college-level classes in critical thinking for Ashford University and the University of Phoenix between 2008 and 2016. In 2017, Dolan started his own law firm, focusing his efforts on helping small business with venture capital, intellectual property, employment, and landlord-tenant matters. Dolan's client list is now in the hundreds through organic marketing and word of mouth. Dolan is the editor-in-chief of the California Lawyers Association, solo and small firm publication called The Practitioner, and serves on the executive committee for the SSF section of the CLA. Dolan also volunteers his time with the San Diego Volunteer Lawyer Program, Tenants' Rights Clinic, advising San Diego tenants on their rights to keep them in their homes. In 2021, Dolan received special recognition from the leadership at the SDVLP for his outstanding service to the public. Purdue University Global has asked Dolan 3 times in 2020 and 2022 to share his story and provide keynote speech to new graduates. Dolan has also been invited by Purdue Global Law School to share his experience with prospective students and has done so since 2019. Outside of work, Dolan has been married to his college sweetheart, Amber, for the past 20 years. He has 4 kids, ages 17, 16, 14, and 12, and lives in San Diego, California. And we are blessed and thankful to have him here today. Dolan, welcome, my brother. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
hey man, anytime. Thank you so much for doing this. I feel like this is something that needs to be done, and I appreciate that you're doing this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we couldn't do it without people like you who are willing to volunteer their time. And so I just want to thank you for that. Let's just jump right into it, Dolan. First of all, congratulations on your law firm that you started. That is incredible. Your background is amazing. The accomplishments that you've been able to do, the amount of degrees you have. I mean, impressive. But yeah, I want to just kind of jump right into it, Dolan, and really get some thoughts on your specific specialty as far as the law that you practice now. And it just kind of like, what's life like for an attorney? I know a lot of people have ideas on what it is to be an attorney, but I would love to hear your thoughts on, your current practice.
Sure. So I started out traditionally working at this like 40 lawyer law firm in San Diego where we represented charter schools throughout the state. So it was a very typical lawyer lifestyle that was probably 70 hours a week. There was a lot of travel involved, and there was offices throughout California. And anytime that the partners wanted you to go to Sacramento, you had to go. You had to go to LA, you had to go. So I did that for about a year. I realized about 30 days in that wasn't going to work for me. So I knew that I wanted to do something different. I always wanted to open up my own law practice because I wanted to be working from home. I wanted to be with my family as much as I could, but also support them as much as I could as well. So I always wanted to just be my own boss in a lot of the ways. And so after about I'd say about 9 months of working there. I put in my resignation. I was done about a year later, but I started representing small businesses. And it just really started happening through a friend of mine. He had this digital marketing agency that he had. It was just this really small outfit. He had some questions about some things. I helped him with some paperwork, and he knew some other people who knew some other people. And then, like kids, friends, parents, they had issues on occasion with their small business, a laundromat, real estate agents, little things like that. And it just started to add up over time to the point to where I didn't need to work for somebody else anymore. I was able to just open up my own law practice, and I've been doing that since 2017. So a typical day really, what I do is I have my clients put me on a bit of a retainer, kind of like a monthly subscription in a way, to where they just pay me, and if they need something, they can call me. So this way we don't have to really sweat the whole billing situation. I have a bill at the end of each month and they've got questions. And it turns out that, of course, 80% of them, it's not a problem. 20%, they might use up every dollar that they got. But truthfully, I managed to balance that out. But if they've got questions about an intellectual property issue, so for example, if somebody's got an issue where they've got somebody saying they're stealing their trademark, they might have questions about that. A landlord-tenant issue, it could be a slip and fall issue that they've got, employees issues. So there's a lot of different issues that come up with the small business. So they just pay me to do that, and that's pretty much what I do all day, is essentially answer emails. But by and large, I don't really go to court a ton, because really, I'd say 95% of what we do, we can settle out of court. A lot of times it's just general questions that end up really just kind of hypothetical stuff. Sometimes I'll help some companies. Like there's a client that I have, they sell bourbon, basically. It's called the Old Hillside Bourbon Company. They are in the process of seeking funding, investments for their company. So I help them with that, help them with the due diligence, things like that. So it really kind of spans a lot of different areas of the law, but that's largely what my day consists of, is really just tending to those clients. And then, and I just get to do it from home here in San Diego. So I'm very fortunate.
That is amazing. So let's kind of dig into the switch from working at a practice to working from home. What was the benefits? What have you seen as the benefits of having your own practice, that you now work from home, having, more of that autonomy as opposed to the more traditional way that you started?
Sure. It's the three things that I always wanted out of my career: was the autonomy, it's the mastery, and the purpose. And what I mean by that with autonomy is that I can decide which clients I take. You can't do that when you're working at a law firm. You're just told what to do, where to go, and when to be there. Now I'm really only beholden to the clients that I choose to work with. So that kind of autonomy is really important. And with 4 kids, for me, I gotta be flexible. So there's just always be something going on at all times. Or just simple stuff like, a handyman comes by, my dog throws up. Like, I don't have to ask permission anymore to do certain things, and I'm able to set my own schedule, which is important. The mastery in that by representing small businesses, I'm able to really expand what it is that I've had to know about the law. There's so much overlap in different areas of the law that when I was working at a law firm, it was really, really narrow. It was just about school law and nothing else. And the way that works is that they go on a different, you can go to court if you are suing for a special education issue, but they have a whole separate administrative hearings process, meaning that they don't even have any experience with how the court system works, what different motions need, so things like that. Doing my own practice, I got a crash course on all of that. So I've been able to really expand what I've been able to master. But also, it's really the purpose. As a small business owner, somebody who's always wanted to be one, who sees the benefits in doing that, who is, as long as I live, if I could avoid working for somebody else, I want to help people achieve that same goal. And sometimes the legal issues get in the way, but I'm there to assist them and make sure that they achieve whatever it is that they want in their lives. And so it really gives me that sense of purpose. It gets me up at 6 o'clock every morning, ready to go, because it's something that I feel like I can do for myself, and it's something that I can do for other people. So I really get that intrinsic and extrinsic value that I want out of my career. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah,
that's what what spurred the transition for me from the firm over to my own practice.
That is amazing. So it's clear from listening to you that you're passionate about entrepreneurship. You're passionate about the freedom that an entrepreneurship provides. Talk to me a little bit about how that passion came about. Were you always a person, even growing up, like, oh, I'm gonna own my own business, I want to start that one day? Or is it something that you kind of realized once you got the traditional law school job and said, lawyer job, and said, you know what, I want to do something different?
That's honestly, I, for years, thought that I'd be able to just climb like a corporate ladder wherever I was. And that's just what I was taught, essentially, that I needed to do. But I realized wherever I worked that unless I fit in with the dominant culture of wherever I was, then I really was never going to work. And of course, there was nothing wrong in particular with the places that I worked. The people I worked with were very nice, very professional. I'm still connected to many of them on LinkedIn, and some of them were friends. However, my lifestyle was always just different. I got married when I was like 21. So for me, and we had kids at like 22. So for me, with people that were my age, I had little kids at home when a lot of my colleagues wanted to go party, and I had more in common with, my supervisors than I did with people that I actually worked with on the floor. But I wasn't into a lot of the same things that they were, and I wasn't willing to sell my soul necessarily the same way. So not to be pejorative about it, but I saw so much of what was being taken from them personally, how they couldn't raise their kids. They couldn't take care of anything at home. They couldn't take care of themselves. It was all for somebody else's business all of the time. So even if what they did was meaningful and wasn't their business, on top of the fact that they could be let go. So I started to see those things over the years, which is part of the reason why I even decided to enroll in law. So I didn't decide to enroll in law school until I was almost 30. So by the time I had got to the law firm, and at that point I was thinking I made it, right? I had an assistant. I had a huge office, right? I had a corporate card of Southwest. But it was great. 3 weeks in, I was like, I got to get out of here. Like, 'cause these people are going to crush me into dust if I don't figure out what it is that I want to do. And I always had really wanted to do it. Because I'd been kind of trained to work for somebody else for so long, that's what I decided to do. So I realized entrepreneurship, self-employment, it's not for everybody, and that's okay. But I realized that working for somebody else, it wasn't for me. And so far, after almost 7 years of doing this, I haven't been wrong.
What are some misconceptions that people may have about lawyers that you can kind of set straight for us? Because, most people, when we're thinking lawyers, we're thinking Law and Order, we're thinking dramatic trial cases, we're thinking all of that stuff. Could you kind of pull us behind the curtain and share with us what being a lawyer and what it's really like, what law,
Of course. Yeah. So one of the things that's misunderstood is that most lawyers don't work for a large law firm. In fact, I'd say 65% of lawyers, at least here in California, and this is the case largely nationwide, 66% are in law firms of 4 or less attorneys. So most lawyers don't work like the Suits, Law and Order kind of lifestyle where it's just like big glass towers. Most of them are like me. They work out of their own home. So that's one misconception. The other misconception is that we know everything about the law. I always try to tell people that it's a practice, meaning that we are always learning. In fact, the state bar requires that we do 25 hours worth of learning I think it's 3 years. We have to keep continuously learning. And sometimes we're just dead wrong, but we have to keep getting better. The third misconception, I think, is that we go to court all the time. Truthfully, most lawyers rarely see the inside of a courtroom, mostly because you don't always need to. Most things are settled outside of court. They might be settled through arbitration. They might be settled through some sort of private mediation or settlement. Most results never make it to court. Some things have to go to court, like family law, criminal law, for example. If you're being evicted from your home, those things require court hearings because due process is required. But most disputes really are just about money a lot of the times, or property of some sort. A lot of the times those things can be exchanged without having to go to court. So those are probably three of the biggest misconceptions that people have about lawyers that hopefully that clears up just a little bit.
So we're going to touch on a bunch of different things, but let's take it back to the beginning, Dolan. I would love to hear about, your early influences growing up as a kid, where you grew up as a kid. Were you always such an intellectual and academic, or was it something that kind of grew over time? Tell me a little bit about your beginning.
Sure. So I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. My whole family is from Toledo, Ohio, but my mom moved to Phoenix probably 3 weeks before I was born. So that's where I was born and raised. My mom and dad, they broke up pretty early in my life. So I was like a lot of Black folks. I was raised by a single mother in Phoenix, and it was mostly me and my brother. My mom got remarried, and then she had my sister, who's about 13 years younger than I am, and so it was the four of us for most of my growing up. And to be frank, growing up, it's tough when you have a single parent. I don't know if you had one, but it can be. And now that I've been with my wife for so long, and we've raised our kids, I can see now why it's so hard to raise kids on your own. So I always gave my mom credit for doing that. But to be honest, my upbringing, it was kind of tough. I'm not going to lie. And for me, a lot of the times, going to school for me was a bit of an outlet. It was a safe place that I could go. It was somewhere where I always enjoyed learning, but it was like a clean, safe environment where people listened to what I had to say. There were adults around that tended to my needs on occasion. So that's kind of where I've always been. So I've always enjoyed reading and writing, and part of that is because of what was going on at home. My mom she had some undiagnosed mental health issues, frankly, and one of the ways that they proliferated was that she was a hoarder, meaning that like you see on TLC that show hoarders, that was my mom. From floor to ceiling, wall to wall, we just had junk in the house. It was newspapers, telephone books. It would be old food, bicycles, furniture, you name it. It was just everywhere. And it just being home, it was so uncomfortable. There was nowhere to sit, we had to eat out all the time. And I never had friends over. So like I could never, like if I went anywhere, I went to my friend's house a lot of the time. And so that's why going to school really, it helped me, because it was legitimately the safest, cleanest place that I could be that wasn't at home. And so, and my dad, after I saw him maybe a couple of times after I was like maybe 8, he moved to Michigan, and I maybe saw him 2 or 3 times before he died. So he was just never really in the picture. So going to school really just kind of helped, because sometimes, if I had ideas or I could get positive feedback, basically all the things that I wasn't really getting at home, I got from school. And so that's what spurred a lot of that learning. And it was also a way for me to be able to move forward, because I don't know any, before I became a lawyer, I didn't really know any lawyers. I didn't know how the law practice worked. I didn't know how to become a lawyer. None of that was even a remote possibility for me at all. So I went through school thinking that I'd be able to just maybe get out through that method. And when I graduated high school and I left home to go to college at 18, I just never came back home. School was always my way, even after I became an adult, to be able to do that. So now I've been done with school for a few years, and thank God, but that's kind of how that worked, and kind of what sowed the seeds for part of who I am today and part of what I do today. Now, as far as me becoming an attorney specifically, so back in 2011, I was working for the University of Phoenix. My wife and I actually were both working for the school. And at the time, there were layoffs every quarter. Every quarter, the earnings would come out. There'd be a new department gone. People, packed up their boxes. You'd see them, and you would just know that I knew that I was going to be next at some point. I was just an academic counselor there. I was like helping people with their credits and stuff. And I knew it was going to be time. And at the time, my wife and I had 3 of our eventual 4 kids. And we were driving to daycare one day, and I turned and I looked at her, and I just said, what if I became a lawyer? And it was I don't know if it was just divine inspiration or just out of nowhere, but I just been thinking in my subconscious, what is it that I could do that would allow me, if things are bad, I can still support my family, but when things are good, I can maybe have unlimited earning potential, but also do something that I feel like mattered to me as a person. So at the end of my career, I can look back and say, you know what, I did something. I helped in some way and feel proud of it and have my kids be proud of what they did. They could just say, you know, my dad's a lawyer. And for, you know, for Black kids, I want them to be able to have some pride and know somebody that did something with their lives, unlike in my situation where I couldn't do the same thing. So that's part of where that went. And then I started with Purdue Global Law School, as you probably know, and then the rest is history. So that's kind of how we led up to where I'm at now.
That is amazing, man. You've touched on so many key things. I want to go back to when you were talking about how you used education in that school environment to kind of overcome some of the home obstacles. You know, because oftentimes you see many people, they use, well, not use, but that home environment or that negative home experience causes them to go in the opposite direction. And maybe, you know, they kind of go off the rails, but it almost is like it kind of focused you and caused you to be laser focused on education and improving yourself. Where did that come from? Like, where did that, was somebody guiding you and saying, hey, Dolan, I know you got a lot going on, do well in school and you'll be able to change your life or your future family's life? Or was this just, did you just kind of naturally gravitate toward using school as an outlet for the issues you were going through?
That's a good question. So what's funny is that it was a natural thing. And when you had mentioned that some people go the other way, that's what happened to my older brother. Him and I are estranged, but from the time he was maybe 16 up until now, drugs, just like with my dad, and alcohol, just like with my dad, it scooped him up and it just never let him go. So I realized that early on, him and I basically, we had a choice, you know, and I think that it's tough because when you're so young, you're faced with this choice of you're going to have to figure out what to do or you're just going to do nothing. And I feel like that's the case with so many kids, especially if they have parents who are struggling, and or if they've got single parents, maybe they gotta be able to do it on their own. But to be able to do that, when I look back and I see the kind of work that I needed to put in, and I see the kind of discipline that I needed, even though it feels like it came natural to me, the truth is that I just never really felt like I had a choice other than to actually do that. And so I think with my brother's situation, I think that he saw that and he wasn't as inclined academically necessarily as the years went on and the demands became more as he got closer to adulthood. It became more difficult, I think, for him to be able to look at his life directly and think like, yeah, I can do something about it. So it's just like a series of small decisions. With that said, this isn't to not to like discredit people in my life that helped me, certain teachers, coaches when I played football in high school, people that believed that I was capable of doing something, gave me positive feedback about things, were willing to teach me all of these things. All of those people in my community, in some way or form, they may not fully know it, but they played a role in helping me see myself as somebody that could do it and helping me believe that I could rewrite the script of my life. So I think that that's a lot of where that's turned. Is it was a lot of it was internal, but of course I couldn't do it without other people giving me that encouragement, whether they knew they were doing that or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You also mentioned something else in regards to just, you know, becoming a lawyer and the impact that that will have on your kids and eventually their kids. And so share with me kind of your thought process on what becoming a lawyer and getting that degree and how that legacy affects the next generation of kids, the next generation of your family who may not necessarily now ever experience, and it's a good thing, but never experience kind of some of the struggles that you had to go through as a kid.
Sure. So I always thought to myself, like, what is it that people that before me did to help give me these opportunities? And what do I want for my future generations, my descendants? What do I want them to look back and see? And I want them to look back and see what it is that they are capable of. because I've always said that if in my situation, if I could do it, legitimately anybody can do it. I'm not particularly smart or hardworking. I'm not particularly genius in any particular way. If anything, I feel like it's just a series of choices that I made that really helped me out, combined with a support system that I've been able to develop, especially with my wife and my kids, especially as they've gotten older, being able to move along in that path and to basically look backward and to look forward. One of the challenges, of course, is that my kids, they have no idea. Not really. There's no way for me to recreate a lot of the nonsense that I had to grow up with for them to understand. So truthfully, I have to try to keep them from being super spoiled because it shows up in sometimes. I think it's only the natural course of things. So what I try to do is I just try to remind them as gently as I can that of how lucky they are, but really just to be grateful for the things that they've got, to always have the gratitude, to remember that they're given an excellent opportunity where they have two parents who love each other, who have an education, and who are able to support them. Those are all the building blocks you need to try to build a life that means something. So I want them not to just see, dad was a lawyer. I want them to see that dad's doing something that is meaningful to him, allows him to support his family, and gives him a sense of pride and purpose as well. That mastery, that autonomy, and that purpose that they were looking for, because I want them to take that forward anyway. So I've got 3 girls. I know for them, there's a chance that any one of them, they may just want to stay home with their kids, but I want them to still apply that same mentality of the mastery, autonomy, and the purpose to raising the kids, because I feel like that's probably the most important job that anybody could have. And that's what I want them to see. That's the legacy that I'm trying to leave for them, is to do something that matters intrinsically and do something that matters extrinsically too.
That is awesome. Is that Daniel Pink you're referencing, the mastery, autonomy, and purpose?
Absolutely. I saw that YouTube video in 2009, and it turned this light bulb on for me. And I was thinking, he's on to something. And from that point forward, that's what I started looking for eternally. And then I tried to start matching what my career and my life was going to look like with that as well. So for those 3 things, I credit that YouTube video for so much, because it's really guided everything about how I do and why I do it.
Awesome. I mean, that actually leads me to my next question, because obviously you're a student. You have a very interesting background because you're a lawyer, but you also have a, kind of an academic educational background, being a counselor. I've heard a lot of people mention, because of YouTube, because of the access to information now, I've heard a lot of people say that, well, you don't need to go to college anymore. I can learn anything I need to learn on Google. I can learn anything I need to learn on YouTube. What are your thoughts on that as a person who has this academic background and a person who obviously you needed to go through the traditional means of education to become a lawyer? What are your thoughts on this whole college is not needed anymore thing?
I feel like college serves such an important purpose, but it is only one piece of the lifelong learning that has to continue. So here's one thing that a lot of people don't know. You don't need a law degree to become a lawyer in California. I think they may require 2 years, like an associate's degree. You can study under a lawyer for a number of years and then take the bar exam. So in my opinion, I think that depending on what it is that you do, college may not be necessary for you. For some things, college is a lifeline for the community, for the people that attend. Colleges are so important in part because they do the research that's necessary. They're the ones that have the resources, the access to the highest levels of government. I feel like those institutions are so important that deciding not to go to college, I think that is fine. However, I also know that you have to be consistent with whatever learning it is that you're doing. And in some cases, you may need to be exceptional. I always use LeBron as an example. That dude did not need to go to college at all, right? There's no reason for him to step foot on a college campus because he's so exceptional. College would have just held him back. For most of us, maybe we're not so exceptional that we can't benefit from the guidance from those that have come before us and to learn. Plus, I feel like the social benefits of college are are missed a lot of the times. It's probably the last time for young men and women to find other young men and women that are their age, that don't have a lot of baggage, that have similar interests, that have similar experiences, and live in the same area. Because after that, it becomes much harder to find a romantic life or personal life with friendships where you can connect that same way. I'm still friends with people I know from college. I met my wife in college, as did a lot of other people that I know. So I feel like it's not absolutely necessary at all, but I feel like its importance can't be devalued. It's important, but not required. I guess it'd be like eating an apple every day. It's important, but it's not going to kill you if you don't.
Right. As you were growing up, elementary, middle school, high school, what kind of student were you? Were you just naturally intelligent? Did schoolwork kind of come easy for you, or was it something that kind of took a lot of work and effort over the years?
I was an okay student. That was it. I was just an okay student. The only time that I really enjoyed going to school, like the academic sitting in class part of it, was when I started law school. And I realized that I could take what I was learning and that same day apply it to some situation. Right. The application was so direct that I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. But growing up, I did seriously just well enough to get by because a lot of the material I felt was boring. I felt like a lot of it, even now into my 40s, I didn't feel like it was very relevant, a lot of it. And I haven't been able to apply it. So even though I've got these degrees, I still haven't been able to apply a lot of what I've learned from criminal justice or my master's in education. It's just, I've been able to apply what I learned as a lawyer in this case. That's not the case in every field. Those are the cases in the fields that I chose to major in. But throughout high school and in elementary school, really, I went to school because it was a safe place where all my friends played. And so because of that, I was there enough. But, going home, there wasn't a lot of that support there necessarily that I needed to do what I needed to do. So I tried to do my homework at school as fast as I could and just do enough to be able to get by. As I got closer to college age, I realized I needed to maybe do slightly better so that way I could get into school. But I went to an in-state school. I didn't need to get superior grades. So truthfully, I was maybe a slightly above average student, enough to just get into college, and the same thing in college as well. Because school for me had a totally different purpose than it did for other students that were there to get good grades. So I was there to kind of get away. So that's what my early experience was like. Like I said, I still loved learning. I still do. So I was able to do that. But at the same time, I was not even close to a 4.0 student at all. I think maybe the 2.75 in high school at best. And that was enough to get into school. And that's all I needed.
This is amazing. I definitely wanted to provide some context for this because when people think of the top careers, lawyer is going to be in that top 5 jobs, top 5 or top 10. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, all of these different things. So you're telling me that even if this is some high school student watching this now, and they maybe are a BC student, mostly C, you're telling me they can still turn their act around, and there's still a possibility that if they wanted to, and if they're willing to put in the work, they could become a lawyer.
There's no doubt in my mind that is the case, because I'm living proof of it, that you do not need to be a 4.0 student. You do not have to be at the top of your class. There's nothing wrong with being a 4.0 student at all. There's nothing wrong with going to Harvard Law School. There's nothing wrong with that at all. However, the way that I see it is that at the end of the day, all the Harvard lawyers that pass the bar, I passed the bar as well. So for me, in my experience, it is hardly about your grades. Your grades, be proud of those. To any high schoolers watching, be proud of the grades that you've received. However, your grades are not who you are. Your grades don't dictate everything. They can open doors, but unless you ask yourself what it is that you want to do with your life, what do you want out of your career? What do you want out of your love life, out of your friendships? When you start thinking about how do you want the script of your life to go, really, then you'll start seeing the outside world really begin to take shape and form to fit what it is that you want. And so when I started asking myself those questions when I was maybe 16, 17 years old, then from that point, I started seeing the world shape up the way that I wanted it to. So yes, get good grades, nothing wrong with that. I encourage my kids to get good grades, but I tell them all the time, you don't have to go to a top tier school. Go to the local state university, learn something, meet people, because so much of what you do is about what's going on in here rather than what's going on a piece of paper.
Wow. No, I could talk to you all day, man. This is awesome.
That's too right, yeah.
You're sharing some awesome tidbits. So here's my question for you, Dolan. What makes you, because I'm sure you're very humble, but just listening to you talk and seeing your track record, you're a pretty intelligent guy. But obviously you're saying it's not that. That wasn't what got you to where you are today. And so my question for you is, what allowed you to overcome some of these obstacles that a lot of young kids wouldn't be able to overcome? What allowed you to be able to continue to keep striving for more when a lot of people would have said, you know what, I got 1 master's degree, I'm good. Or I got 2 master's degree, I'm good. Or I got this dream law job that I've always said I wanted and I got it, I'm good. But it seems like you were like, even when you hit a milestone, you were still motivated to continue to keep pushing forward, continue to keep overcoming. So what's unique about Dolan that has caused you to be able to get to where you are today, despite what you've had to overcome in that process?
Sure. So a lot of it, with the dysfunction that I had growing up, it really weighed on my self-esteem. It weighed on my sense of self and where I was going, because all of my role models were people that just constantly struggled. So the question that I had to ask myself really is, what did I want? Why did I want it? And how was I going to get it? What did I need to do to have the kind of life that I was satisfied with in this case? So I think for so many people, and I see this now that I've got like older kids, like my oldest is almost 18 now, and I see this in friends of hers and the stories that she tells me. Same thing with my son, he's 16. For a lot of people, they do things because they think other people want them to do a particular thing or don't want them to do a particular thing. Fear holds a lot of people back about certain things. I always want those people to start asking themselves, what is it that I want and why is that important to me? So for me, part of the reason I have such a big family is because at such a small family, when your mom's a hoarder, you don't have family get-togethers, you don't have barbecues, you don't have visits from people, your friends don't come over. So for me, now I'm at home all day. Before I was never home. So it's those little things that I look back in my past and I ask myself, what do I want? And I realized that I wanted a big family. I wanted to have Christmas celebrated under a big giant tree. I wanted all of these things that I saw, and I started to ask myself, like, how was I going to achieve those things? How do I afford those particular things? Because they don't just happen. So by doing that, by asking those questions, what did I want? Why did I want it? How was I going to get it? Maybe what did I see for myself? And really convincing myself that maybe, just maybe, I was worthy of those particular things really started to shape my own sense of self-esteem and self-respect. So really, it starts internally with so many people. So even if you're 50 or whether you're 15, person may feel stuck in a situation or they may feel like there's no way out. There's always going to be, so long as you ask yourself those things and then you're willing to do those steps necessary, then in the end, that is what I guess was different about my situation to where maybe somebody like my brother, I don't know if he's ever asked those questions at all. I don't know if he's ever asked himself if he deserved those particular things. So that's what I do. And I still do those things. As my life evolves, I still ask myself those questions, and it tends to work out for me. So I think that if anything, those are the things I would suggest.
Absolutely. And you and I have we share a lot of similarities. I'm raised by a single mom. Also, I went to Purdue Global for law school. But you mentioned, I guess what I heard from you was the idea of feeling worthy of success from your recent response. I know that I always struggle a lot of times with feeling worthy of success. So I guess the question I have for you is, after overcoming the things that you went through and going through the struggles that you went through, and it seems as though your brother, you and I have a very similar situation. I have a younger brother, similar situation as yours. Why do you feel like you felt worthy of these better things for you in your future? You felt worthy of having this big, beautiful family. You felt worthy of pursuing higher education. What do you think caused you to feel that? Were you inspired by some person or something that you read or learned as a young person, or it just was kind of innately in you?
It is a little bit of a combination of both. I think that I had to ask myself, why shouldn't I be worthy of these particular things? The worth is always relative necessarily, but I felt, why not me? Why can't I in particular have these things? Why does my fate have to be the same as everybody else around me? Why can't I choose something different for myself? So I think that, truthfully, I don't know if I even still have the answers to those questions. But I think just opening the door to that has allowed me to believe that maybe, just maybe, it's possible that I am. And I probably have to give an enormous amount of credit to my wife, because I met her when I was 19, right? So her and I've known her my whole adult life. And so she helped. If anybody helped inspire me really directly, it was my wife. Through going, through college. My first couple of years in college, I was on academic probation. Like I said, I was an okay student. If I had failed again, I would have been kicked out of school. But my wife encouraged me to start asking some of these questions. For example, I was going to do athletic training as a major. And she asked, why do you want to do that? What if you just she was a criminal justice major. She's like, what if you just take a CJ class, see what you think, and then take it from there? She's like, I think you can do it. And her confidence in that, that I would like it, and her confidence that I could switch majors and be fine, really was like the initial part of it. And so I took the class, I loved it, I switched my major, and then I ended up having a degree in it. As I got closer to wanting to go to grad school, those same doubts started to pop up, like, can I do this? I don't know anybody with a graduate degree. Like, what the hell am I thinking during this? That's so far beyond anything I ever knew. And I was like, I think you could do it. She was like, yeah, she got me some GRE books, like it's like the entrance exam you have to take or whatever. She was like, just have some time to practice. She just always believed in my abilities to do whatever it is that I wanted to do. And she came in at a really critical point in my life, 19, 20 years old, when the self-doubt can be at an all-time high.
Absolutely.
Because I'm out of, elementary school, I'm out of high school, I'm a grown-up now. So, but through that, through us having kids, through the career changes, through the moves from Phoenix to California, every time she's always believed in my ability to do so unconditionally. So I never really felt that growing up. I didn't know what it was like to have somebody believe in you unconditionally that you could do something. And when you start having some successes, no matter how minor, you start to begin to believe, like, man, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do this. And when I took the bar, same thing when I was in law school, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anymore. This is going to be insane. It was the same thing. When I told you that story about when I asked her, what if I became a lawyer? And she was like, yeah, go ahead. Like, there was no question in her mind. For her, it's like a light bulb clicks on. She's like, yeah, go ahead and do it. So her confidence in me is really what's made a big difference in my life, even until this particular day. When I wanted to start a law firm, same thing. I asked her, okay, how little money can we live on if I start a law practice? And she did the math and she was like, this is what we can live on. She was like, as long as you do this, we can be fine. We'll get Medi-Cal if we need to. We'll get food stamps if we do. It doesn't matter. We'll just make it work. So having somebody have that confidence to me, it's made all the difference in the world. She's my soulmate. It's really saved my life in a lot of ways. She helped bring out what was already inside of me to help be the best man that I could be. So that's a big part of it. So it's this intrinsic part and this intrinsic part as well that's worked together that I hope can continue to serve me for as long as I live.
That's awesome. Shout out to Mrs. Dolan Williams. All the support that you provided to your husband. That is amazing.
Definitely.
Amber, right? Shout out to
Yes, that's right. Yes. Thank you.
That is amazing. So let's talk about college, because you mentioned college a little bit. You changed your major after getting encouragement from Amber. What was it like? Well, first of all, what university we're talking about? Is this Arizona that you changed?
Sure. Yeah, this was at Northern Arizona.
Northern Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Flagstaff. Okay, is that a pretty diverse university? Did you see a lot of other Black people who were in some of these classes you were taking?
Oh, absolutely not. Flagstaff is it's in this rural, mountainy part of Arizona. It's the smallest of the three state schools in Arizona: ASU, University of Arizona, and then there's NAU. They call it the stepchild of the three schools in Arizona. And it was overwhelmingly white, probably 80% white, maybe another 15% Native American because it was near the reservation, and just a vanishingly small number of people of color and infinitesimally small number of Black people. However, one of the things, I guess, just not to discredit them entirely, the university knows that. And so before college, they actually had this program where Black students, students of color, first-generation students of any color could come to the campus for the summer, spend 5 weeks there, take a couple classes, get used to it, and meet other people that are going to be a lot like them, which is ironically where I met my wife at this particular program. Yeah. Wow. So even though there wasn't a large number of Black people there, I was able to connect with the few that were there, or at least even if they weren't Black, they had similar experiences as me, and we were on the same wavelength as far as that mentality of, if this doesn't work out, I don't know what I'm going to do. There was no backup plan at all. So NAU it's still not a very diverse school, but they definitely make those efforts to try to help students who feel more comfortable.
That is awesome. And so let's talk about just the whole idea of race and the career path that you're in. Historically, there's been a contentious relationship from African Americans and the law, for various reasons. And so I guess the question I have for you is, what has it been like for you as an African American being a lawyer, and I'm sure oftentimes being the only person that looks like you in the room? What is that like? And then also, what is it like practicing? And do you feel some kind of extra weight as an African American attorney? Like, do you feel like you have to overperform? Do you feel like you have to, be excellent times 10 just to be able to prove to people? We've had people on the show who are doctors who've talked about how, they feel like they have to win the patient over in the first 45 seconds because they know that they're being judged as being African American. Share your experience as being a Black man in the legal field.
Sure. So it's been largely just fine. However, being a Black person in the law does color some of my experiences. I'd mentioned earlier that part of the reason that I got out of the typical kind of 9-to-5 gig was in part because I didn't fit in with the dominant culture, which is just, if I'm being honest, it's just code word for a larger white culture, none of which is bad. At the last law firm I worked for, the lawyers I worked with were competent, they were friendly, they were inviting, professional, intelligent, and I learned so much from them in just the year that I was there. However, working somewhere is more than just being really good at the law. It was the hallway meetings, it's the after work stuff. So I just wasn't into a lot of the same things that the leadership, all of whom were white, were into. The hiking, the camping, the coffee, the wine, the dogs, the things like that. Like I just didn't I mean, it was different for me. I wasn't a white person and it wasn't bad. You know, they didn't fault me for it. I didn't fault them for it, but it just meant that I was a lot less likely to be invited over for, you know, some dinner party or to go on some retreat or something like that, or to be considered part of the inner circle the same way. I think it's just human nature, but I didn't want to spend my career maybe changing parts of who I was in order to be able to fit into that culture of the partners at that particular firm. I needed to do something on my own if I was going to maintain my own sense of integrity. Largely, yes. Most of the time, I am the only Black person in the room. A lot of times, the only Black male in the room. I've tried to use my experiences growing up, particularly in Phoenix, Arizona, to not let that dissuade me from just being the best that I can be and being okay with the fact that I may not be the best lawyer. Maybe it's different for doctors because I think when you're dealing with people's health, maybe there's a higher level of anxiety. Most legal fights are over money or property, like I said. So there just isn't that same level of fear or anxiety or indignity that might exist. But I've never felt the need to prove myself necessarily or win over my particular clients. I've always come from a stance of, if something like the color of my skin is a problem for a client, then there was no chance that we were ever going to get along. If the color of my skin is not a problem for my clients, then we can get discussing on the matters that are important to them beyond anything. And although there's no way for me to calculate how many clients have not called me back because of something like that, but all I know is that I feel like a personal success. I feel like I'm serving people in my community, and that's what's really most important to me beyond anything else. And I know that the color of my skin doesn't matter. Did have one experience where it caused me to raise my eyebrow a little bit. Just one client, we were potentially needing to sue a kind of large company, and she had asked, "Do you think that you being Black, that they're going to take you seriously?" And oddly enough, it was a Black woman that asked me that. And so a lot of the times I feel like people from my own community sometimes have those doubts more than anybody else from the other race. So I feel like if anything, if I have to ever prove myself or have to go above and beyond, it's for my Black clients more so than it is for my clients of any other color. And I'm sure that you probably understand all the reasons why, all of those internalized reasons why that we might need to do that. But at least I feel like with my Black clients, I can level with them when they ask me those questions or they have those doubts, because we can be real about it. So in the end, I feel like that largely it's been fine. I've been accepted into the legal community despite the color of my skin. I've got plenty of clients despite it, but nevertheless, my perspective, it is just a little bit different. And so for any people that are looking to become lawyers or looking to switch into that field, just keep in mind that those might be some of the things that you might have to deal with, but largely, you're probably going to be okay.
Absolutely, and Ben, it's like you're inside my head as far as my questions. And we're kind of wrapping up here. We got a few more minutes, but let's do a little bit of role playing. Assume that I am some young aspiring person who also wants to be a lawyer. I guess the first question I have is, what kind of skill sets do I need to have? What kind of habits do I need to have? Do I need to be a voracious reader? Do I need to love Law and Order? Do I need to, what do you need to be able to have, and who do you need to be able to get to where you are today?
Sure. So I think the one thing to keep in mind is that lawyers sell peace of mind. That is our commodity. So you have to consider all of the possible ways that you can provide that. Some clients need legal citations for that. Some clients are just okay with just taking my word for it. Some clients need to know that what you said matches up with what they read online somewhere. Nevertheless, you have to be a person being okay giving people their peace of mind. This is a profession of trust. So if you can work on your trust building skills, then that is going to be the most important thing. That means that you have to be honest about who you are, right? You have to be willing to keep people's secrets. You got to be somebody that's trustworthy. For example, for me, I had to start thinking about what are some of the shortcomings that I had that would keep me from winning people's trust. For example, I can be rebellious in really petty and insignificant ways. I can be a bit of a workaholic, and sometimes I struggle with empathy. So for those three things, I have to still constantly be intentional with those things, because all of those things can destroy somebody's trust in you. So that's going to be step one. Step two is that it's always important to remember that it's never going to be your problem, but you have to show people the respect that they need. Put yourself in their shoes. And if you do that, if you have just enough understanding and care of their situation, that's all you're going to need. You have to stay impartial. You have to stay professional, because that's what they're paying you to do. But you're not going to go anywhere unless you care. The other thing that you have to consider is, deep down, you know what it is that you want to do. You know what it is. You just have to be okay releasing that. If you want to be a lawyer and you're not exactly sure what kind of law that you want to do, start thinking, because deep down you do know what kind of law that you would want to do. You want to defend defendants in court, criminal cases, do that. You want to help sue companies for violating people's civil rights, do that. Really think about that. And I always just think that like I said, think about the people that came before you. Think about the people that came after you. And then figure out, where do you fit in that particular picture? As a technical matter, reading, writing, obviously super important, but especially for lawyers, this is all about practice. Doing it again and doing it again and then doing it again until you get better. You don't have to be especially smart or especially studious to be a lawyer. You just need to be willing to do it, screw up, do it again until you get better and you become a professional at it.
So one of the questions I want to ask you is, do you have any resources that you would recommend? Any, for somebody who's aspiring, who's watching this interview, any books that you would recommend, any podcasts, any YouTube channels, anything that you would recommend somebody who wants to go down this professional track like you? Maybe they want to be a lawyer, or maybe they want to do something else in the professional world. Would there be any resources that you would recommend?
Sure. So probably two of the most important books that I ever read, I love to read, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the second one is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Those two books were probably written almost 100 years ago now by Dale Carnegie. And those two books are things that I feel like have helped me continue to shape my life and to do those particular things in my life. So I think that in the end, as long as you stay hungry, you'll never go hungry. You'll always be on the lookout and things will just appear. So any particular podcast or anything like that, I wouldn't be able to say. I would say that once somebody gets down and really starts figuring out, who am I, what do I want, and how do I get it, then they'll just start appearing for you. So if you do that, that's going to be what's most critical.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And just to wrap up, Dolan, we're very passionate about being able to give back. We like to talk to Black professionals and small business owners who have been able to become successful, share with them about their story, but also encourage them, if they aren't already, to be impactful in someone else's life. And so let's say by chance, though, that from this podcast, I have some person who reaches out to me and they're inspired. They're inspired because they can relate to your story and they can identify with some of the things that you were able to overcome and accomplish. Would it be okay if I connected them with you? Would you be willing to, give a little bit of time to encourage or coach them or help them out?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We all have to be looking out for each other. And I also have a recommendation for you once we're done here, from somebody that one of my clients, him and three of his friends run this bourbon company. It's an all Black owned business. And I feel like that their story is very inspiring as well. and I can connect you with them so that way maybe you guys can chat about this too.
I would love to. Lastly, Dolan, how can people reach you? Like, what's your social media? What's your website for your law firm? Do you only represent people in the state of California, or could somebody who's outside of California, should they also be reaching out to you as well?
Sure. So I don't maintain a website and I don't have like a strong social media presence. Everything that
That's how you know you're good at what you do.
That's right. It's all been word of mouth, mostly because I don't want to spend the money on marketing, and also because I feel like those that are willing to spread the word, they're often going to be my best marketing in that case. But if people have questions, if they need representation, it's info at williamslawsd, like San Diego.com. So you can just email me if you need anything. And largely, I can represent people in pretty much anywhere as long as we don't go to court outside of California. But I'm happy to chat.
Awesome. Dolan, thank you. Thank you so much for taking time. This was incredible. We appreciate you for sharing your incredible story of overcoming. And yeah, thank you so much. That's the podcast.
Sure, man.